All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and the producer of All Indiana Politics. It's up to you who will represent Indiana in the U.S. Senate next year. Current Senator Mike Braun is running for governor rather than a second 6-year Senate term. That announcement scrambled Hoosier politics. Running to succeed him are Republican Jim Banks, Democrat Valerie McCray, and Libertarian Andrew Horning. Banks has represented Indiana's 3rd congressional district since 2017. He's vacating his own seat to run for the Senate. He tells me he sees the Senate as a place where he can build on his work in Congress to date. Joining us now is Republican candidate for Senate, Jim Banks. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you.
So you're vacating your seat in the 3rd congressional district to run for the Senate. Why did you choose to do that?
Well, it's a big opportunity for our state, the opportunity to be a senator for the whole state. I've had the privilege of representing Northeast Indiana, my hometown, Columbia City, the Fort Wayne area district, the last 8 years. But when Mike Braun announced that he was running for governor, it opened the Senate seat. There's so much more that I can do for my home state as a United States Senator, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing. I serve on the Armed Services Committee, I serve on the Education Committee, and I serve on the new Select Committee on China in the House. My priorities won't be different, but being one of 100 and having a bigger platform and voice in the Congress as a senator means I can get more done for Indiana.
The economy is playing a big role in this election, and specifically inflation and housing. What are your plans for those two issues?
Well, we have to bring down inflation first and foremost, and inflation is directly driven by government spending. The federal government has spent more in the last 3 years than it's ever spent in American history, and that's driven inflation sky high. It's one of the reasons why I continue to have one of the most fiscally conservative voting records in Congress. I always vote against spending bills if it doesn't bring down the debt and cut wasteful spending to put us on a path to balance the budget and balance the debt. And when I chaired the largest conservative caucus in Congress last term, I submitted the only budget that anyone submitted at all into the Congress that balanced the budget in 5 years or less and put us on a path to bring down the national debt. Unfortunately, what we have today is just the opposite. Every 100 days, we add $1 trillion to the national debt at the spending levels that we're on. It's why I voted against the short-term continuing resolution last week, because it continues to spend at those levels and continues to drive us further into debt. My kids are 15, 13, and 11 years old, and they will be directly affected by what is now a $35 trillion national debt on a path to $50 trillion in 10 years or a little bit more if we keep spending at those levels. And that directly contributes to inflation. I mean, keep in mind as well that we spend more on paying interest on the national debt today than we do on the entire budget of the Pentagon. So think about what that added nearly $1 trillion a year that we pay on the interest of the debt could do to build more schools, to build more roads in the United States, let alone to contribute to our national security. And it's being spent on the interest of our debt. So this is a crisis for our country. We have to get it under control. Now, in the Senate, I will continue to be a voice for fiscal conservatism, which will do more than anything to drive down interest rates in this country.
What about the housing crisis?
Major crisis. As I've traveled all 92 counties of the state campaigning for this job over the last couple of years, every mayor of every small town, every big city, commissioners all over the state talk about the housing crisis that we have in Indiana. How do we attract the new jobs and the jobs of the future if workers don't have a place to live? How do you attract workers if you don't have housing? So we have that to deal with, but also the high interest rates. They're coming down a little bit in the near term, but they're still over twice as much as what they were when Donald Trump was in office. So that we've got to address sky high interest rates that affect the housing crisis. And I've met with home builders all over the state as well. In fact, I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Indiana Home Builders Association, because when I meet with them and talk to them, they talk about the cost of new regulations on building homes. Up to 40% of the cost of building a new house is just related to the regulations on the builders. So we need common sense regulations coming from the federal level. We should leave a lot of those issues to be governed by the state level, and I'll be a voice for that type of common sense in the Senate too.
Would you vote for a federal law banning abortion?
Look, I'm one of the most pro-life members of the United States House of Representatives, 100% pro-life voting record. Nobody's talking about a federal ban at the federal level. We have a very strong law at the state level in Indiana, which I fully support. When Roe v. Wade was struck down by the Supreme Court, the Indiana legislature was the first state in the country to pass a pro-life law after the Dobbs decision. I fully support it. At the federal level, aside from a national abortion ban is not going to happen. President Trump has made that very clear. If he's the president, there's not going to be a national abortion ban, and Congress won't be voting on it. But what I do think Congress can do is pass laws like saving babies after a botched abortion. The Born Alive Infant Protection Act is something that the House passed this year. The Senate is controlled by Democrats and didn't allow it to move forward. But if a baby takes a breath after a failed abortion, that baby should have all of the health care protections that any other human being should have, and that's what that law would do. I also think you can look at laws at the federal level. Once a baby feels pain, once a baby has a heartbeat in the womb, I believe that a federal law to protect those babies in the womb is completely justified, and I've co-sponsored bills to do just that. But the Dobbs decision empowers the states to act, and in Indiana, the state of Indiana has acted. We are a pro-life state, and I think the law at the state of Indiana is very strong and adequate, and I support it 100%.
So if a national ban came up in the Senate, would you vote for it or against it?
Well, I'm not going to speculate because I don't know what that would look like. But what I'm telling you that I would vote for are bills just like I've co-sponsored in the past to save babies after a heartbeat is detected, after a baby can feel pain in the womb. That I would fully support federal laws that would save babies in the womb who feel pain or who have a heartbeat. And those are the types of laws that I've co-sponsored at the federal level. So my position on that won't change when I get to the United States Senate. But it's a moot point. There won't be bills voted on in Congress, especially with marginal majorities, either Republican or Democrat in the House or the Senate. But I would vote for bills that would save babies after they take a breath, if they are born after a failed abortion, or in the other incidents that I just described before.
You've called for reinstating the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers. What about those who are already in the country unlawfully?
We should send them all back to where they came from.
Is that feasible to send them all back?
I think it's totally feasible. Mass deportation of illegals. Today we have the conservative estimates say 15 to 20 million illegals who have come into our country since Biden and Kamala Harris have become president and vice president. And that's astonishing. What adding twice the population of the state of Indiana illegally into our country, flooding into our country in a short period of time, what that's done to America. So mass deportation of illegals is something that I fully support. In the vice presidential debate, I thought vice presidential candidate and Senator J.D. Vance did a great job of describing what the Trump plan would be for mass deportation that I support. Start with the criminals first. I mean, we have thousands of illegal criminals who have committed violent crimes in this country, and they should all be immediately deported and sent back to the countries where they came from. So start with the criminals, but then also tighten the rules in this country that create an incentive for illegals to come here in the first place. Crack down on companies who hire illegals. Take away the job opportunities that are being taken away from American citizens by illegals. If you crack down on those entities that are employing illegals, then a lot of those illegals are going to go home on their own. But I support a full mass deportation effort, and when I'm Indiana's next United States Senator, I'll be on the front lines of fighting for it.
What about DACA recipients?
Yeah, we've debated the DACA recipients in the past. Again, if individuals are in this country illegally, they shouldn't be rewarded for their illegal activity. So, in this case, the children of illegals. I mean, I have supported bills in the past that would do things like secure the border and also build the wall and go and reinstate or legislate the Remain in Mexico policy so that it's in the law permanently. If we do that, then I would be fully willing to add provisions that would grant a permanent legal status to DACA recipients who are in this country. But we have to secure the border first, stop the flood of illegals. And perhaps that's a trade-off in the equation, too, that I would be open to supporting.
Which leads me to my next question. What about the legal immigration system?
Totally broken. And this is one thing that when Republicans were in the majority before, we debated bills that I supported that would secure the border and fix illegal immigration, go back to the Trump policies that we know that work, Remain in Mexico, build the wall, stop the Obama, Biden, Harris catch and release policies, which means an illegal is apprehended at the border and they're released into the United States instead of being sent back across the border or where they came from. So once you fix that, you have to fix a broken legal process too. We should completely do away with the visa lottery system and replace it with a merit-based approach to legal immigration, like most of the developed world, other countries around the world who have a merit-based approach that takes into account America's economy, the needs of America's economy, and how legal immigration would affect American workers. And this is what more than anything will be a top priority of me in the United States Senate. We'll be putting American workers first, whether they're steel workers in Gary or factory workers in Fort Wayne. Their jobs matter more than the interest of foreign countries and foreign workers. So that has to be the approach to legal immigration processes. We've debated it in Congress before. It hasn't moved forward. But my hope is after this next election, the American people are fed up with what illegal immigration is doing to this country. We need to take a larger approach to fixing illegal immigration than solving the broken legal process as well.
How do we address the nation's fentanyl crisis? And more specifically, what do we do to help those who are already battling addiction? Yeah,
I think we have to do three things. First, you have to secure the border because 99% of fentanyl coming into this country are coming over a wide open southern border from Mexico, being pushed into this country by Mexican drug cartels. So you got to. This is why the wall matters. When I go to the border and meet with Border Patrol agents, they talk about why the wall mattered to them. It made it simpler for them to do their job to keep illegal drugs and crime out of our country. So you got to build the wall for that reason, to stop fentanyl from coming into our country. And then secondly, I think you have to go to war with the Mexican drug cartels. I mean, I'm for using the full force of the United States military to go after the Mexican drug cartels who are fully responsible for flushing and flooding illegal fentanyl into this country, which is the biggest and leading cause of death of Americans my age, of working age, of military age in this country. The Mexican drug cartels are pushing it into our country, and they know today they can get away with it. So I say go to war with them. Use the military to do it. And I know President Trump is very focused on that as well when he gets back into the White House. And then the third thing you got to do is you got to sanction China and hold China accountable, because all of the ingredients of fentanyl are coming from our biggest foreign adversary, the Chinese Communist Party. They utilize the Mexican drug cartels to push it into our country, but they're the ones who are profiting off of it just as much, because they make the ingredients, send it to the southern border, and then it ends up in our country, and it impacts communities all over this state. I've been to every community in this state, and you hear the stories of moms and dads who tell me their stories about losing a son or a daughter or a family member to a fentanyl overdose, and it's just heartbreaking. And it's why I say every state in this country is a border state, because we're all impacted by it. So those are the three things that you have to do to stop fentanyl to come into our country. But then on top of that, the federal government needs to do more to partner with the state and local communities for treatment facilities to help people in need who have been affected by the crisis. A year ago, or a couple of years ago, I hosted on Capitol Hill a number of families, including Hoosier families who have been affected by this crisis, and then others who are a part of treatment facilities. And we had a really powerful conversation in Washington. I invited many of my colleagues to come be a part of it from other states as well, and talk about how we can do that. But I think a large effort from the federal level, partnering with local communities and local treatment facilities, is something that we need to take a much bigger look at.
You alluded to this earlier, the $35 trillion national debt, and you said we need to get our spending under control. What cuts specifically would you like to make in order to get that under control?
Well, I think first and foremost, simply go back to pre-pandemic spending levels, and that will put us on a better path. So right now, we are still spending at pandemic spending levels. The government budgets have all increased substantially during the pandemic, but then they were never brought back to where they were pre 2021. So that would be an adequate way to get us started down that path. But I'm for across the board discretionary spending cuts of every federal department, whether there's a 1% cut or whatever that might be. The federal government is bloated all across the board. I mean, it happened even in a bigger way during COVID, but a 1% across the board spending cut of all federal agencies will put us on a path to do that. But really, this isn't that hard. It just takes lawmakers in Washington from both parties to come together and say, we have a crisis of $35 trillion national debt. We're spending almost $1 trillion a year to just pay the interest on the debt, and we got to do something about it. And I think one way to solve it is across the board spending cuts. And you need lawmakers who have the courage to do that, who will go back to their states and their districts and explain why we cut this program or that program, because our kids are counting on us to rein in spending and the debt. It's why I've taken this approach. I vote against all of the spending bills that don't cut spending and put us on a path to pay down the national debt, and that's what I'll continue to do in the Senate.
So how do you deal with situations like what we had here in Indiana with the attendant care program? Now, obviously, that was a state-level issue, but same general concept here, that we ended up with about 1,600 medically complex kids who lost access to a Medicaid-funded program. That put their families in a pretty serious bind. How do you minimize situations like that if you do across-the-board spending cuts?
You cut bureaucracy. I mean, it's really simple. I mean, right now you have almost every federal building in Washington, D.C. that's half empty, or even worse, because the Biden-Harris administration still lets most of their employees work from home, which tells me that we don't need a lot of those employees in the federal government. So when you walk around these federal buildings, it's embarrassing in the Biden-Harris administration that federal employees don't even have to come to work still, because they're still playing by COVID-era pandemic rules that told them that they could stay home. So I've been told by wise people before, and I totally agree with this, you'll be surprised by the government that you'll never miss. That's the approach that I've taken, and I believe that we can cut the federal government in big ways. But just look at the Constitution. I mean, what is the role of the federal government? There is nothing in our federal Constitution that talks about education. That is explicitly a role of the states, not the federal government. But we have a large federal Department of Education that we could fully do away with it and block grant those dollars and send it back to the states and let the states control how those dollars are spent instead of the federal government telling them how to run schools. So that's a great area where you could easily save billions of dollars by cutting that type of bureaucracy. Block grant Medicaid to the states. The federal government, I mean, what I've learned from serving both at the state level in Indiana and at the federal level is that when you take money from the states and send it to Washington and then send it back to the states, you're cutting a lot of money out of because of bureaucracy. You're cutting a lot of you're spending a lot of tax dollars just to pay for the bureaucracy to do that. How about let the states keep that money, block grant it to the states, and let the states control how that money is spent? That's my conservative Hoosier philosophy, and the type of philosophy I'll take to the United States Senate.
Let's turn to foreign policy. You've criticized the amount of military aid we've provided to Ukraine thus far in their conflict. What conditions would need to be met in order for you to support it?
Yeah, it would be hard for me to support any more funding to go to Ukraine. I mean, we're talking at this point $200 billion or more just in the last few years sent to Ukraine. All the while, we have a wide open border. We have sky high inflation. When Donald Trump left office, gas prices were around $2.25 a gallon. I filled up this morning over $3 a gallon, and that's low compared to what it's been over the last 4 years. So when you go to the grocery store, you're paying a lot more money at the grocery store because of inflation. We've already talked about fentanyl, the leading cause of death in the United States of Americans of working age, because it's flowing into our country because of wide open border. I am far more focused about the crisis that we have going on in the United States of America than I am on what's going on in Ukraine, and that's why I voted against all of the major spending bills to Ukraine, because we have to put America first, and that's just my philosophy. I believe Hoosiers agree with that. Hoosiers are struggling to get by. I saw a report in Axios a week ago that Indiana is hit the hardest in the Midwest by inflation. And if you look at estimates of what that means, the average Hoosier family has had to pay $22,000 because of inflation over the last 3 years. That's $22,000 that most Hoosier families don't have. So I can't in good conscience send $200 billion or more to Ukraine when Hoosier families are suffering right here at home. So that's my attitude about that. President Trump has talked about bringing a resolution to the war in Ukraine. He met with President Zelensky at Trump Tower in New York City a week ago and talked about what that resolution might look like when he's back in the White House. It's my hope that a resolution will happen quickly, and America doesn't have to be the blank check book to countries like Ukraine around the world until we get our own problems solved here at home.
Should the United States reconsider some of the aid it's providing to Israel? One issue that's been raised, for example, is the use of 2,000-pound American-made bombs to hit Hamas targets that are in extremely heavily populated areas.
Well, I fully support what Israel is doing. Israel is not asking America to send troops, but symbolically, we should support Israel, our most important ally in the entire world, and not get in their way from doing what they have to do to protect themselves. And this is what's bothersome to me about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is they call for ceasefires. They want to stand in the way of Israel defending itself. We should just get out of the way and let them do what they need to do to take out the bad guys at Hamas, who, by the way, attacked Israel 1 year ago and took hostages, including American hostages, in Gaza. Now, Hezbollah, I was just in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and I visited a soccer field in the northern part of the country that was attacked by rockets from Hezbollah that killed 13 children on a soccer field. And I went to that soccer field. I met with the families of those young kids that just happened over the summer in July. So these are evil people, evil ideologies. The Houthis are another one of these terrorist groups in the Middle East. All three of these groups, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, are Iranian proxy groups. So Iran, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism, funnels money to these terrorist groups, and then they're doing things like attacking our ally Israel. So what does America do about it? We need to go back to what President Trump did, the maximum pressure campaign on Iran that dried up their funding. It locked up their assets. It froze the money that was flowing into Iran by sanctioning those who were doing it. And then that dries up money that Iran is sending to these terrorist proxy groups. And when President Trump was in office, it worked. That maximum pressure campaign rocked those groups back. Today, they're more powerful than ever because all of that money has been unfrozen and Iran is funding these groups that's attacking Israel. The least we can do is get out of Israel's way and allow them to defend themselves.
Why support Israel militarily but not Ukraine?
Well, Israel is a military partner of the United States of America. I mean, they're strategically important to they share our values, they share our goals. They support us, we support them. It's a long-time partnership, but I'm for supporting Israel and giving them lethal aid, weapons, military support. When we're talking about Ukraine, that a very large amount of that $200 billion to Ukraine didn't go to its military. It went to prop up their government. And if this sounds familiar, it should to all of you, because I served in Afghanistan. It was a 20-year effort of American taxpayers bankrolling the government, in many ways corrupt government in Afghanistan that didn't end up turning out well. Those efforts fail. We should be supporting the military efforts in places like Israel. Israel's not asking us for money to prop up their government. They don't need that. What they're asking for is symbolically for America and the rest of the world's support to take out the bad guys who have attacked them. And that's what America stands for, and that's what we should do.
We've covered a lot of national level issues in this conversation. What are some projects specific to the state of Indiana that you would like to work on if you were elected to the Senate?
Well, let's talk about China. I mean, China is the biggest adversary of the United States of America, both militarily and economically. And Indiana is the largest steel producing state in the country. We have my district in Northeast Indiana. We're one of the top steel districts. The first district, the region of Indiana, is the top steel producing district in the United States of America. And the Chinese for years have gotten away with dumping steel, with manipulating the steel market, and through that have killed good paying steel jobs in places like Indiana. So it's long past time to hold them accountable for what they've done to our economy, for stealing our jobs. We've had Republican presidents and Democrat presidents who have turned a blind eye to China until President Trump. He's the first president in my lifetime who took China seriously, who called them out for being an enemy of the United States of America. So I fully support tariffs on China because they're not a fair actor. We should hold them accountable, not just for what they've done to the Hoosier economy and stealing our jobs, and what they did during COVID. It was their negligence that led to COVID spreading around the world. They've never been held accountable for what they've done to the United States of America and the rest of the world. So it's long past time to hold them accountable. Their goal is to wipe out our economy, and instead we should be holding them accountable for their bad trade practices. And when we do that, that'll be really good for Indiana. It'll be good for our manufacturing economy. We make things in Indiana. We're known for that, not just around the country, but around the world. If we want to bring good paying manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America, then it's long past time to hold China accountable for what they've done to our economy. And that'll be one of my very top priorities in the Senate.
What makes you the best choice in this race?
Well, it's experience and it's values. Indiana's a conservative state. I'm a conservative congressman. I have a proven conservative track record. And the experience that I've had for 8 years in the House of Representatives will lend itself really well to being an effective United States Senator for the whole state. It's an incredible honor to serve Indiana already in the House, but to serve my whole home state, this great state in the United States Senate, is something that is unfathomable to me. I mean, it's such an incredible honor to be able to do that. And if Indiana gives me the opportunity to do that, I'll do my very best to make you proud each and every day.
Jim Banks, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Jim Banks, Republican candidate for Indiana's U.S. Senate seat. Early voting is currently underway, and Election Day is on November 5th. And remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.